Welcome to AI Agents Unlock series. And today we are going to be talking about building with integrity, the ethics of AI agents in industry. And we have our wonderful guest here, Ms. Deepti. And Deepti, could you, before we dive in, how would you like to introduce yourself to our audience? And maybe talk about some of the problems that you've been solving right now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Keshavan, for having me on this session today. I'm really excited to talk about a topic that I care very deeply about. Um, these days, I simply introduce myself as that I build intelligent platforms that scale with trust. Over the past 15 years or so, my experience has been in building and leading large scale cloud native SaaS, identity, data intensive platforms. And right now, I'm focused on helping teams move from AI experiments to something that they can actually rely on, like production grade systems, and which have real guardrails and accountability. So that's the work I'm doing today through Newbroad, and where I help organizations design AI ready platforms and responsible agentic workflows.
Yeah, I just want to ask a follow up on that. For our viewers, could you describe more about the company? I think you mentioned Newbroad and the work that they do and how it's relevant with your background. Yeah.
Yeah, so my background, as I said, has been working with large scale enterprises at Equinix, at GE, at Apollo Education Group, where I started with things like adaptive learning, predictive analytics, machine learning models, which sort of progressed from providing analytics data, providing recommendations and dashboards, where human in the loop was sort of the final decision maker. But as we are progressing, I found this opportunity that um, I could leverage that knowledge and experience from all of these previous companies to really build and advise founders, early stage startups on building ethical, autonomous AI agentic workflows and systems.
Right. I think that's wonderful and very relevant to our podcast. Yeah, of course. What does building AI agents with integrity specifically mean, given you're in industry context and you're working with founders? And, what is the integrity part um, that you're working on?
So, for me, integrity in AI agents is not like just a fancy statement, it's a design principle. What that means is that an AI agent should behave the way you expect a well trained teammate to behave, which is predictable, accountable, and transparent about why they are doing something, right?
Mhm.
So often we talk about ethics in very abstract terms, but actually in enterprises, it has to be concrete, right? There are stakes, sometimes very, very big stakes in play. And so it's about boundaries. And in case of agents, so I'd take like three examples or key points, right? What should the agent be allowed to see, right?
Mhm.
What decisions should be it be allowed to make, and how do we make sure it can't quietly drift or step into places it doesn't belong, right? So in my world, building platforms over last several years, and identity systems specifically, integrity has always meant that A, you verify, B, you explain, and C, you govern every action. It has to be auditable. And
Mhm.
AI agents shouldn't get a free pass because humans don't. So, if anything, I think the bar is way higher because it's important to recognize that agents can act very fast and at scale. So, by the time we figure out something is gone wrong, um, it might have a huge impact.
Yeah, of course, right? Like nowadays, AI agents just work autonomously and like they're able to do tasks, and it depends, right? Like so, stakes go up. So, what do you think are some of the ethical failures that you observe? Like, is it bias? Is it hallucination? Or like maybe dark patterns? And or is it something entirely different that you observe?
Well, some of the top ethical failures that I would worry about, they are like something that can creep in very quietly, right? And they're practical ones which show up in real systems. So the first one would be biased decisions, in my view,
Mhm.
because agents can make decisions fast. And if the underlying data has bias, is corrupted, or worst case, is poisoned by some malicious intent or users, right? The agent will amplify it before anybody notices, and the scale makes the issues very big very quickly. So that's the first one. And second, I think, is confident hallucination. It comes to my mind because, and this is something that I've personally experienced while interacting with frontier LLMs. So the problem is that it could not just be wrong, but it could be wrong with a confidence. So agents that sound very sure of themselves can push teams um, to decisions that they would never have made on their own, right? So
Mhm.
that's a real worry. And finally, I think the silent shift in boundary. So as being in the IAM domain for some time, like I think this is something that people underestimate.
Mhm.
So whether it's an AI agent or a machine or a service or anything, right? System user, if the agents usually start with a narrow scope, okay, this is the one thing that the agent has to do. And over a period of time, as teams grow, different people interact with the code or augment the code, the teams add just say, okay, I'll just add this one more permission to this agent or just one more action. And that really causes a scope creep for the agent. And suddenly the agent is operating outside of the boundaries that it was designed for. And really speaking, these failures can creep in very quietly and
Mhm.
silently, which is why these days there is a lot of talk about explainability, which comes from implementing the right guardrails for observability, identity boundaries, and good governance. They all matter a lot. And one of the things I really talk to the teams about is really think about observability driven design, which will directly, in case of AI agents, feed it into explainability.
Yeah, I think observability driven design is something really interesting that you brought up. And when it comes to, working with founders, right? Like most founders are just like wanting to build something really scrappy and get it out as quick as possible. And they sort of want to validate the product market fit. And um, yeah, so they don't really care about good quality code practices, but then like, just getting that initial funding or proving the product market fit, right? So how do you or let's say what's your response to that sort of founder mindset?
Yeah, Keshavan, great question. I hear that a lot, right? And because I currently, there's a lot of innovation activity going on today, right? And including with myself, I'm working on a product, and I really understand where this feeling is coming from. When you are early, everything, feels like a race, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that, in my view, ethic is not a separate independent track, right?
Yeah.
It's architecture. And if you ignore it, uh, when you are actually starting out, you won't move faster because you just built an invisible debt, perhaps, that would hit you at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
And what early stage founders need is, they don't need like a 50-page ethics policy or a 200-page um, guardrails document, whatever, right? They need simple guardrails that would prevent irreversible mistakes.
Mm.
For example, clear data boundaries,
Yeah.
transparent logs, and explicit this be automated kind of checks, right? So these are all lightweight, and
Yeah.
I would say that they would help you ship with confidence. And this is something that I'm also formalizing currently, to give founders a practical, minimal set of questions and guardrails so that they can move fast and create future innovation and avoid any kind of landmines. So I'd say that, in short, you don't need more ethics when you are early as a founder. You just need the right ones. That's it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And have you, seen any companies that are, maybe they were just about to cross the ethical boundaries, and like, did you have to pull any sort of teams back and like, say this is not right, you got to follow the ethics, or you need to have certain guardrails in place? And were there any instances of that, like maybe without naming the companies, you could share those examples? That would be really helpful for our audience here.
Yeah, no, I think there is one moment that has stayed with me. This is from a prior work experience. And this is not exactly about um, AI, but more machine learning models. So we were working on an internal automation system that analyzed infrastructure telemetry, right, to predict incidents, send
Mhm.
alerts, and really help with the predictive monitoring of the system, and find issues and take remedial actions before something bad happens, right? So on the surface, it was simple: detect issues before humans saw them, right, and enable humans to take actions if needed, or the service or the automation to take action. But during the testing, the model started inferring things we did not intend it to infer. For example, it wasn't about personal data of users, but more like about high level customer data. So it was like kind of using the knowledge gain across the customers in the model. And I think the accuracy was impressive, right? But I think there was some discomfort about whether this is the right thing to do. And so what we did was like, bring everyone together, like security, privacy, data engineering, product teams, and then just ask the question: just because the system can learn this and it's accurate, should it? So we kind of ended up tightening the feature a little bit, adding more clearer inference boundaries, and introducing some you know failure cases, edge cases for testing. And I would say that in hindsight, that decision built more trust
Mhm.
um, internally, which is where it matters. And once we have internal trust, that transitions to our customers. I think that really shaped some of my thinking process when I lead the projects today. And I'd say that most of these challenges, they don't arrive as like big like dramatic moments, like when you ask me the question, like there's no big moment like that, but they show up quietly as you work through some of these challenges and problems.
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, so what sort of reaction did they have when you proposed a tightening of that feature? Like, did the business teams react differently, or the technical team said maybe no? And was there some sort of struggle back and forth? And yeah, so I think that'll be really exciting to hear. Yeah.
So I mean, I think if you're talking about how business stakeholders take responsible AI or explainability, and like how do they see it when we bring these things together, out for discussion, I'd say the first reaction from folks is often that, hey, we need to ship, right? Just like the founder's question, right? Even
Yeah.
enterprises all have the same pressures and time to market and competition that they're trying to manage and overcome. So the first reaction often is like, how is this going to slow us down? And I think we all get it, right? It is, in most
Mhm.
companies, speed is valued, but once you show leaders what responsible AI actually does, their
Mhm.
view can shift, right? And explainability, for example, reduces escalations, and it's this is something that you can demonstrate, um, because if customers have a way to explain the autonomous AI agent things, they themselves, will be able to see it, reducing a potential escalation. Clear boundaries for AI agents reduce compliance friction. So the boundaries can be built based on compliance regulations in the specific domain or industry. And good governance, I think, reduces rework. So if we have guardrails, like let's say before a release happens or an important change happens, if we have a pre-mortem where people can bring in their concerns, blind spots, edge cases, the so what, or if what if kind of questions, with transparency, I think, um, with this kind of transparency and environment, both internally and externally, the adoption actually can increase. So what I've learned is that responsible AI, if it isn't framed correctly, like if you present it like a guardrail, okay, we need to do this, it wouldn't land very well with stakeholders, but it can land better if you show it as an accelerator to the audience or the stakeholders, because this is something that removes the risk from the path and will allow you to move faster with confidence. So when stakeholders see that, they stop treating it like, oh, this is like insurance, and start treating it like strategy actually. So that helps.
Yeah. I remember you mentioning you were also designing like a checklist for founders to ensure that they follow some sort of ethic practices. So, what are sort of the top five questions or like things that they need to follow, right? So that they're ethical.
Yeah, no, this is a great question and something that I'm currently deeply thinking through and working on.
Yeah.
So I'd say that I keep my checklist simple, because complexity doesn't get used. It's an overhead. So it's pretty simply, there are like 5 questions I believe that every team or leader should ask before writing any line of code or building agents, right?
Yeah.
So one, should this be automated at all? Because sometimes the smartest decision is not to build the agent.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the harm radius if agent is wrong,
Yeah.
right? Who or what gets impacted, right? For, given if something the agent does is wrong, and what is the impact, whether the impact is reversible or not. I think that is also very important. So these two questions are very important. The third being, what data is the agent allowed to see, store, or infer?
Right.
I think that this includes things like inference boundaries, not just access, because you could have access to, let's say, three or four backend IT systems which have the data. However, what data are you allowed, is the agent allowed to actually use when it's inferencing? I think that's all those kinds of boundaries are important. And finally, what actions can the agent take and what actions require a human, and how will it observe any kind of drift or misuse, because agents evolve quietly, and like we discussed before, observability, explainability, it is they are non-negotiable. So I think these are the five principles I'm really formalizing in a lightweight playbook currently. And because teams don't need a 200-page policy, in my view, because they just need a clear set of questions that surface risk early and help them build with confidence. Because we all need to innovate and actually focus on getting our products, features, capabilities to our customers.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying is possible, right? But then it also depends on the culture and the leadership or the leaders that actually have the power to sort of make these decisions, right? So how does the leadership culture influence whether AI agents are deployed responsibly or recklessly?
Keshavan, this is a great question and something which is close to my heart as a leader.
Yeah.
I, in this context, I would say that culture makes the difference between responsible AI and reckless AI.
Hmm. Right.
So, if leaders reward speed without clarity, the teams will cut corners, not because they are careless, but because they're responding to incentives. And that's when you
Yeah.
see agents deployed without guardrails, and that's when shadow AI, you must have heard the term, which is
Mhm.
kind of synonymous with shadow IT, starts to flourish. And I would like to emphasize that shadow IT does not show up because engineers are reckless, right? It's not about the engineers. It shows up because they don't feel supported. So it's important as leaders to communicate that shipping fast matters, but shipping safely matters just as much, right? And understanding the impact matters even more. So the best teams that I have led have had two traits across the board. Like, they work with transparency and they have psychological safety. So engineers, when they felt comfortable raising concerns early, for example during pre-mortems, before having any kind of production changes or deployments,
Mhm.
those teams really did well. And I'd say that if you want responsible AI, leadership has to be very clear that
Yeah.
trust and accountability are part of engineering excellence, not something that you can just bolt on and patch later on.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So, just before we sort of wrap up this discussion, right? Like, what is one bad habit you wish AI builders would stop immediately and start following the ethical principles?
Yeah, I think thanks for those questions. I think one habit I wish AI builders would stop immediately. Well, shipping agents without a permission boundary. So if an agent can act,
Yeah.
it needs clear limits from day one. I would say no exceptions. So
What's one
that
thing they should have? They
one,
should start this week. Yeah.
yeah, one thing they should do, in my view, is basically That's what you're asking, right? One thing they should
Yeah,
do.
one
Okay.
thing the team should start doing from day
Okay.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, one thing I would say that add a single question to every design review, right? What could go wrong if this agent is wrong? And this sounds very basic, Keshwan, but I think it forces teams to think about the blast radius, action boundaries, and oversight before anything hits production. And I think that will do it. That will really help them get a good ethical start for AI agents.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deepthi. I think this has been wonderful. And for listeners who follow our work and who want to follow yours as well, where's the best place for them to, sort of find you or reach out to you online?
Yeah, no, it's been great. Thanks for the wonderful conversation today. Um, the best space to follow my work is on LinkedIn. I do regularly, not so post about platform engineering, leadership, building systems that scale. And if you're exploring AI platforms, agent workflows, or governance and
Mhm.
want a sounding board, my website has more about my advisory services and which I'm building at New Broad. And I always enjoy connecting with people who are serious about uh, doing this the right way. So happy to connect. Looking forward to more conversations and thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deepthi. And I think I myself would start to reach out to you for more guidance on the ethical practices when I start building. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening to our podcast. And hopefully, we'll see you again either in the next episode or in the final. Yeah, probably in the next episode. Yeah, thank you.